Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, April 16th, 2025. Have you got your taxes in? You were supposed to have gotten that in yesterday, and I hope you did, because, I don't know, if he finds out that you're listening to this show, he might audit you. I don't know, maybe, something like that. Anyway, you're supposed to be a good citizen, despite the country failing you in many respects. But what can I tell you? Anyway, that's not the big news today, and I'll have to find out what the big news is from others, because I don't know. I've been fascinated reading some articles which may or may not actually constitute the big news of the day. Once again, mesmerized by the horrible person that Elon Musk is. Although I don't have access to the Wall Street Journal article, I've seen a great number of excerpts from it. Josh Marshall is obsessing over it. Doesn't make him look very good, I can tell you about that. And let's see, many other aspects of his character under examination today. And I'll have to ask Justice for clarification on some of the stories he's hinting at today. I don't know what's going on. I understand the Musk reference, but something about is it Dave? How does David? Is it Hogue or Hogg? How he spells him? The young activist from Florida, the gun rights activist, thank you very much, gun safety advocate, survivor of the high school shooting there at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, very vociferous activist, but he gets a mention today. I haven't noticed what's going on with him, and when I ran into that surname in the past, it was pronounced as Hogue rather than Hogg. So I'm like, okay, thank you. Now I've got my update. Justice sends me this article from Politico. An unprecedented move. DNC official to spend big to take what? To take down fellow Democrats. Oh, I see. All right, well, I can see where that might be disturbing. I'll look into that, see what he's up to. Greg Dworkin is already collecting the stories today. I know he's got access to that Elon Musk story. I don't know if that's, chief interest of the day, but it is out there. And let's see, a couple other things. Lots of activity in the court. More hearings in front of Judge Zenas yesterday, in which she admonished the government, you really do at some point have to actually follow my orders. They keep insisting, maybe not, though. And it's coming to a head. We'll see whether she decides that they gave her one of those little hammers for a reason. But she's definitely setting up such that she's allowing the government essentially the rope to hang itself, although it's very frustrating to watch and wait for her to declare them to have been hanged already. But all right, lots to catch up on. Greg is ready and waiting, and I guess we can go to number 2 fanfare on the list if you like, Greg. We'll play in with let's see, trumpet fanfare. All right. That's a shorter version of the one we used last time. That's you might even go with that one. That's very newsy.
Yeah.
All right.
I suppose. I wonder if you can play it backwards.
I would have to manipulate it, but yeah, it would take me some time to engineer that.
I suppose. But you have a professional on staff, so
yes.
Leave it to
I just
them.
have to, make sure that he's. Well, anyway.
Oh wait.
yeah. Yeah.
Been done that. Yep.
Oh, hey, I could wake him up with a fanfare. Maybe
that's true.
Tomorrow's fanfare. I don't know. What's today? Right. Wednesday? I'll have to save it. Okay.
And if you don't want to be woken up by fanfares every day, just engineer it to do it backwards.
Yeah. Puts you to sleep.
It's a nice bed here. Be ashamed something happened to it.
Well,
that's the way people greet each other these days. So the Dow Jones futures are down again.
That thing. The stock market, I forgot about that.
Stock market has lost about 5.5% over the last 6 months. Not, recession
6 months,
territory,
okay.
but yeah, I mean, we're headed that way. The latest is that China is withholding their rare earths shipments to the United States, which is a problem
That's rare.
because, like, all of our fighter jets and defense industry depends on it.
Hmm.
So Trump naturally thinking ahead, genius moves, 20-dimensional
Yeah.
chess, has screwed us in ways that we're only now discovering.
I wonder if he's thinking, well, now everyone will understand why we must have Greenland,
Yeah, I
but not
suppose.
with, but only with jets we've already built because
Right.
we can't build the ones we need to take. Although, all right. Well, I think that
The
was
other thing
obvious.
that Trump did is he disrupted computer chip traffic between the U.S. and China.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
NVIDIA chips can't go to China now. So the market is down because of that, because they announced that if we can't sell to China, we don't make as much money.
Oh,
And money is what Wall Street's all about.
well, they're pretty transparent about that. Sure.
Yep.
Maybe that's why they're
So
publishing bad
that's
articles
leading
about
today's
Elon Musk.
downturn, but it'll be something else tomorrow because like he doesn't know what he's doing and he's screwing everything up.
Right.
And the fun thing, somebody wrote a one of these memes about
Mm.
watching the stock market go down in a graph. And as you know, when it goes down, it doesn't go straight down. It goes down for 3 days, up one, down for
Yeah.
4 days, up one, down for 4 days, up one. So every time it does that, uh, you have the MAGA people saying as it goes down, no big deal, went down under Biden too. Then it goes up, Trump's a genius. Then it goes down. Oh, well, it was
Right.
even down more under Obama. And then it goes up a day. Oh,
Yeah.
Biden, Trump's a genius. He knows what he's doing. And then it goes down again.
This is the good
And so
kind of
watching the
down.
apologists on social media trying to explain why not only is it okay, but it's genius
Yeah.
that Trump is screwing up so badly is amazing, given the fact that the public doesn't buy it one bit,
Hmm.
and Trump's numbers are down on everything. Even immigration isn't saving him. So
Yeah.
people have caught on, and they don't like what they're seeing.
Well, he's not a likable guy.
No, but his actions aren't either. And it's we all have the same sort of shall we say dichotomy between looking at this and saying, well, I hope this convinces you that maybe it
Hmm.
wasn't a good idea to vote for Trump on the one hand, and the other is, I didn't vote for this. Yeah, you did.
Oh.
You knew
Yeah.
you
Well.
absolutely voted for this. In fact, your voting for this is how we got this. So you can't get off that easily.
Hmm.
And,
Yes.
it's hard. But until there's another election, are we going to convince those people, not the MAGA people, but the ones who say I didn't vote for this? Because the ones that say I voted for this are lost.
Oh well, I guess so.
They're the
I love this.
30%
This is great. Yeah.
every generation. The ones who
Okay.
supported Hitler, the ones who supported Nixon, the
It's
ones
very
who
old
supported
voters.
Trump, they're the same. And they're the same in every country.
I see.
But but what do you do with the ones who say, I truly, honestly, from my heart of hearts, I didn't vote for this.
Hmm.
I voted for better prices, and I was just really ticked off at Harris because reasons
Yeah.
having to do with being too tied to Biden. We've seen that. Al Gore lost because he was too tied to Bill Clinton at a vulnerable time in Clinton's popularity.
Ah, yes. I do remember that one. And let's see, yesterday's bad example or good example, depending on how you look at it, was a video circulating of somebody who had, I guess, been visiting Canada, and on their return, they were harassed at the border, and it's this, it's this wait for the end kind of thing, and it's terrible, and it's disgraceful, and I can't believe it, and et cetera, et cetera. And then at the end, I really thought that when we elected Trump, things would get better, but they got worse. Like, yeah, maybe you were unclear on the topic, on the subject. But yeah,
Right.
another person who found their face eaten and they're unhappy about it.
I
Boo
can't
hoo.
believe he did what he said he did instead of what I
Yeah.
wanted him to do.
Yep. Yep. So, very interesting to observe.
Right.
Not so great to live, but
Right. In any case,
yes.
the big news is actually Harvard.
Yeah.
Fight fiercely, Harvard, as
Hmm.
Tom Lehrer once wrote. Fight, fight, fight.
All
Impress
right.
him with our prowess, do. Because Harvard took a stand against Trump, trying to dictate what Harvard's policies,
Yes.
attitudes, and teaching should
Attitudes,
be.
really.
And that fight may cost Harvard $2 billion in
It's a good
federal funds,
price.
or not, depending, because like when you take Trump to court, he often loses.
That's true too, and
But there's
sometimes permanently.
a bunch of articles, a slew of articles,
Oh,
even a raft
wow.
of articles just in the New York Times alone about that, because Harvard grads are their audience.
That's
And
true.
speaking of their audience, the third article, I have one that says, What to know as Trump freezes federal funds for Harvard and other universities. A second one that says, Why Harvard decided to fight Trump. And the third one, which in some ways is the most interesting,
Hmm. Yes. Oop. All right.
is
Take
the
a
one
moment
about
there.
Columbia, which is, of course, a local school for the New York Times.
Local school makes good
Columbia vows to
or
reject any
bad.
Trump deal that erodes its independence. A message from the university's acting president, and
Ooh.
acting is important, we'll get to that, said
Ah,
that
yeah. I'll
talks
be ready
with the
next
Trump
time.
administration were continuing as the White House is seeking to place the school under judicial oversight.
No, thank you.
Claire Shipman's the acting president. She's not the wimp who just bowed to Trump pressure at the beginning of Columbia's descent into a servitude.
Hmm.
So they have a relatively new acting president who said, I'm not doing any of this.
Okay.
She said, We're not going to allow the federal government to require us to relinquish our independence and autonomy. But they didn't do it until Harvard did it. And just about every analyst says, well, since Harvard's endowment is just so bizarrely large,
Yeah.
you know, uh, Harvard has to take a lead on this. The
Well,
endowment is
even if
like
it wasn't, they'd have
70%
to.
spoken for, so they can't just use the funds for whatever they want, even though it's in the billions. So the fact that Harvard is willing to fight means Columbia all of a sudden found its spunk and
All right.
publicly said, we're not doing it. And that's what you wanted from the big law firms that you didn't get, except for
Hmm.
some of them, Perkins Coie, for example. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. It
so
may yet turn around. Let him win a case, and maybe things turn around.
Right.
Maybe.
And so the analysts and experts in authoritarianism say, look, it all starts early and you have to resist early. And it's really important not to preemptively fold. And so those that do really set the tone. Those that don't also set the tone. And so that's why it's so
Tones are easy
important
to
and a
set.
leading story that Harvard is resisting.
Yes, I'm glad to see it. I was glancing at that this morning and watching people laud them for it, and but also thinking back, like, well, they did just sort of pressure, or I guess the previous president of Harvard, Claudine Gay, just felt that pressure and had to resign and step out of the way. I guess the situation was somewhat different, and I did look back to see, well, how did the Harvard community react to the attacks on their then president, and they were pretty supportive. She basically, it seems to me, like made the decision like they're just going to attack us relentlessly until I'm out of the way, so maybe I'll get out of the way. And it may be that helped them learn the lesson that capitulating as Columbia did isn't going to clear the decks for them. They're just going to find something else. So we might as
Right.
well fight
So
now.
again, the tendency on our side, because it's who we are, is
Oh,
to, find holes and problems with resistance because they didn't do it in the beginning, and they didn't do this and they didn't do that and they didn't do it perfectly.
yeah, they
Uh,
didn't. Well,
but you know what? You got to celebrate resistance because it is what it
yeah, I
is.
mean, look, you found out, you learned a lesson. If it hadn't learned a lesson from it, that would be a real
That would be
problem
even worse.
for an
Yeah. So
educational institution. You
this
must learn
is from
lessons.
the story about Columbia. The message came
Ah,
less than 12 hours after Harvard became the first university to refuse to comply with the administration's demands, prompting federal officials to freeze $2.2 billion in multi-year grants to the school. The
which they
letter
were
was
gonna
sent to
do
students and
anyway.
faculty members as Columbia has endured intense fire for what critics regard as White House appeasement, which it was. Until now, Columbia had largely avoided public criticism of the administration. In her
What?
first public statement in March, Claire Shipman, Columbia's new acting president,
That's
acknowledged that
right.
the university faced a
Acting!
precarious moment, acting, but
Yeah,
she did not directly mention federal officials or their cancellation of $400 million in grants and contracts to the school.
yeah.
And there's a whole separate history one can go into if you want to follow rabbit holes about how
Yes,
the
please.
federal government started funding colleges at or about World War II
Oh,
and beyond.
okay. I
And
mean,
that's how we got this way. But until
you mean
now,
smart?
Columbia's tried to stay out of trouble. And when Ms. Shipman's predecessor, Katrina Armstrong, revealed an agreement regarding major demands from the government, including placing the university's Middle Eastern Studies Department under new oversight and creating a security force empowered to make arrests, she did
What?
not critique the administration's interference in higher education. The weird thing is, you never know in an institution like Columbia whether internally they had had issues with the Middle Eastern Studies Department before, and this was an excuse to do what they wanted to do,
Hmm.
which is, clean house. So there's always internal university politics
That's
going on that you
true.
don't see,
Could be the
and
case.
therefore their so-called capitulation may have been, we've been wanting to get rid of these guys for a long time, and here's our chance.
Yeah, that could be. That's a good
You
point.
don't know. I mean, that may have nothing to do with it, but one simply doesn't know. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Miss Shipman, who said she had read a strongly worded note from Harvard, hey, this is a case where a strongly worded letter actually has
What?
ripple effect,
Well, academics.
appeared to adopt a new tone, the most robust sign of potential pushback from Columbia's leadership since the government's cancellation of federal funding. Ms. Shipman wrote that Columbia would reject heavy-handed orchestration from the government
Would
that
they
could
now?
potentially damage our institution and undermine useful reforms. Any agreement in which federal officials dictate what we teach, research, or who we hire is unacceptable.
All right.
I like that.
Yeah.
Still, Ms. Shipman didn't go as far as Harvard's president, Alan Garber, who categorically refused to stand down, writing on Monday that the federal government had sought to invade university freedoms long recognized by the Supreme Court, and the institution would not concede to demands that go beyond the lawful authority of this or any administration.
All
Mr.
right.
Garber wrote, neither Harvard nor any other private university can allow itself to be taken over by the federal government, and if you keep it up, we will not invite you to tea.
Yeah. Well, it's a big deal, T.
Right. So a few hours later, Columbia issues there. So yeah, it's important that people take the lead. We have to see what Brown, Cornell, Northwestern, and other schools do. But if Columbia's going to be the lightning rod and take the heat, then you have to go with that.
Hmm.
Now, this piece is why Harvard decided to fight Trump,
Why?
even though $2 billion got frozen. Uh, Late on Friday night, the federal government sent Harvard a 5-page fusillade of new demands that would reshape the school's operations, admissions, hiring, faculty, and student life.
That's not much.
And Harvard said, no.
Yeah. It's everything there is. I don't even know really what the aim of the government is here. Although it comes out, there are a couple of profiles of Chris Rufo, who's at the center of all this. And as it turns out, the internal emails among them is, we'd just like to take a scalp. We want to topple one major university, and we don't even care which one it is.
Right.
Hmm.
So how old is the United States approximately?
I'd say late
1776.
teens.
I would say 6-year-old, but
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of independence anyway. That's what
well,
we're
my point is
maybe
that
independence.
Harvard is 388 years old. It's
Okay,
older than the country.
that. Yeah. Columbia, I guess, is too.
Yeah,
But Harvard's
so
even older than that. They're very
Harvard's
old.
even older than that, right?
Okay, well, Columbia was King's College, so
Yeah,
they were worried about the king this time.
right. So, Larry Summers, former Harvard president, said this is what Joe McCarthy was trying to do, magnified 10 or 100-fold.
Well, he's
Thank
dead.
you for bringing up Joe McCarthy. It's about time somebody did.
Sure.
Who was it? Margaret Chase Smith. We need somebody to stand up as a Republican and be the conscience of the Senate. It's Maine, so really that's Susan Collins' role, which she's
Well,
failing at.
yeah. That's unlikely.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. Alaska, very northern, maybe a
Alaska
little
might
more
do it, yeah.
likely.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I am deeply concerned, though.
Right. So the government said it wanted the Harvard faculty's power reduced, demanded that Harvard embrace merit-based admissions and hiring policies.
They have that.
You can take issue with Harvard's legacy policy, but
Sure.
that's how they fund the school.
Yes. That's how they have this endowment that everybody says that they should be using.
But this is
even
more
if they
DEI
can't.
than anything else. Their claim that they want merit-based admissions. The Trump administration wanted to audit university data, saw changes to the recruitment, screening, and admissions of international students.
Mm-hmm.
And
What?
they wanted a review of what they call viewpoint diversity. They wanted to immediately shutter any program related to DEI and bring in an outsider to examine the programs and departments that most fuel anti-Semitic harassment.
Well, that's a
And,
lie.
this is, again, akin to those who wish to support Israel because they really want it destroyed as part of Armageddon. And
Oh yeah,
therefore, I'm a strong supporter of Israel, and anybody who doesn't agree with that particular point of view is anti-Semitic.
yeah.
Yeah, no. And so their whole entire shtick here of going after anti-Semitism is actually going after dissent.
Hmm. Yes. That takes that requires a lot of chutzpah to
Hmm.
do such a thing.
Yeah, something
They're
like
very
that.
concerned about the Jewish people.
So they only seem tangentially connected to the Trump administration's stated ambition of erasing anti-Semitism. Kenneth Marcus, the Education Department civil rights chief during Trump's first term,
Hmm.
said the government's proposal went far beyond anti-Semitism and reflect a
Sure.
far wider cultural concern within the conservative movement about what's rotten in higher education.
Yeah, in their view, everything.
It's an attack on the left-wing tilt that Harvard's thought to exemplify.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Well, as was it John Stewart's line about reality has a well-known left-wing bias? Like that's what happens at
Something like
universities.
that.
Uh, Things that
Stephen Pinker, a
are real.
psychology professor. Yep.
Yes.
Stephen Pinker, a psychology
Thank
professor
you.
and co-president of the Council on Academic Freedom at Harvard, said it was almost inconceivable that a university
Inconceivable.
president could have acceded to that list of demands
Yeah.
because they actually stipulate the content and beliefs of faculty and admitted students, but he marveled over the speed of Harvard's response.
Oh, well, that's a
Larry
very
Summers
efficient thing.
said, the extremity of the demand letter actually made this an easier decision than it might otherwise have been.
Ah, yeah, I could see that. It is. It was crazy. It
Right.
still is.
So basically, why did Harvard wind up being resisting and therefore being the major story? And the answer is because they overreached.
Okay. And they overreach with people who are, very, very proud.
And
And
capable of fighting back.
yeah, that's true. And I think that's why they targeted them. They thought that they might actually win. And then everybody would say, well, if Harvard can't even, then we certainly can't. And I think there are plenty of universities actually probably looking for the opportunity to show, actually, we think we're better than Harvard. Now,
Right. Well,
it's
in
not a
the
better
process
than
of
thing.
going over resistance, another resistance thing that should be mentioned is Janet Mills, the governor of Maine, as you probably know, was
Hmm.
cordial and polite and would not kiss Trump's ring. And so he got really upset. And so he said he's going to target them. And Governor Mills said, that's fine. See you in court. She
Yes.
did. She won.
Oh,
Federal judge unfreezes
hey.
Maine's funds in transgender athlete case against USDA. Now, why this is a Department of Agriculture thing?
Oh,
Because USDA claimed that Maine wasn't in compliance with Title IX, the federal law that bans discrimination in education based on sex, so they therefore weren't going to give any federal funds to help feed people in Maine.
I see. Or they weren't going to give him federal funds for anything, but I guess the first thing they found that was cut off was an agriculture program, a
Well,
feeding program. Is that right?
uh, anything that has to do with food generally comes from USDA as far as federal funding goes. So Maine Attorney General Aaron Frey's complaint said the funding pause is illegally withholding grant funds that go to keeping children fed. USDA denies it
Children.
and says, no, it doesn't affect any nutrition programs. It merely withholds money.
Mmm, delicious, delicious money.
Right? We didn't say you couldn't feed the kids. Just
Right.
feed them with Maine dollars instead of federal
I
dollars.
guess so.
But they
All
lost.
right. Yeah, well, good. I mean, I'm glad that she got to see him in court and that
This is
they
district
lost.
court, by the way.
Yes, that's where you start
So
a trial.
I'm not a lawyer, and as a layperson, I always have to keep in mind, is this district court?
Yes.
Is it circuit court? Is
No.
it Supreme Court?
No.
And the reason is it gives you some idea of how many different appeals are going to happen.
Yes.
And in the case of Trump doing something and the court saying don't, it also gives you some sense of how long the delay can last. But if the judge says you have to unfreeze the funds, there's no delay. And so, yeah, Trump can challenge it all the way up to the Supreme Court if they want to. In the meantime, Maine kids keep getting fed, and the governor of Maine looks like a hero.
Yeah, and less delicious than she was looking when they couldn't have any money to feed the kids. That's good. Generally speaking, 2 appeals, although they've been making appeals directly on an emergency basis to the Supreme Court and sometimes skipping these things. But yeah, there will be an appeal because
if
they
did
appeal
something
everything.
And you're suing them and the delay helps them, then they'll make as many appeals as possible.
Yeah.
If they've done something and a judge says, no, you can't do that, then they'll appeal it right away.
Yeah. And I guess that's what they'll do. So yeah, district court, that's the basic trial level court. And after that, if they want appeals, the circuit court of appeals, and then if that doesn't go their way, sometimes an intermediate step, but then generally Supreme Court, which has the option of saying we're not actually interested. So We'll see. But that's good. See you in court. Oh yeah, okay.
We will.
And we won. Oh. Now we'll have calls for the impeachment of that district judge at any moment. Probably is already happening. But not the actual impeachment, because that won't go anywhere. Just yelling about it and saying that this person is rotten and no good. And we'll see whether anybody then shows up at the judge's house to threaten them. But as you know, in Maine, you can't get there from here, so it's going to be very difficult to find this judge. It's my guess. Probably have to go over a covered bridge to find them. All right, we'll be back in 2 minutes with more news about crazy stuff.
Hi everybody, this is Scott Anderson, your summary guy. Were you looking forward to an egalitarian democracy free of bigotry, misogyny, racism, and greed, where people of different appearances, belief, and heritage had a right to live without fear, and everyone could expect a basic level of health, stability, and safety throughout their life? Well, too bad. The plain fact is that we're heading in the wrong direction. And where we once had a voice in such things, increasingly we don't. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. However, if you're looking to join people who understand today's issues and can intelligently address the reality of today from your point of view, you can join us at Kagro in the morning. As you know, there aren't many of us out there, at least compared to them. We need to stick together, and by that I mean send us money. That is contributions to patreon.com, secure, reoccurring contributions. Those contributions keep this show in the air and us together. We've been through a lot together. The temporary loss of the presidency, we hope. The temporary loss of the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, we hope. Face it, we are pretty much all that we have left. Remember, we couldn't do it without you, and you shouldn't do it without us. We're in this together, so thanks.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We continue talking with Greg Dworkin, rounding up the news of the day. The interesting news about what has happened up at Harvard, or what they're standing up to the president. It reminded me of a story that I want to try and dig out here now while we go through our second segment to see if I can find it. But now buried in pocket. But the craziness of the demand letter to Harvard reminded me that something on the table that we haven't discussed, even though it's now a couple of weeks, maybe even a couple of months old, the full craziness of the demands being made of Ukraine in exchange for our continued quote-unquote help in their fight against Russia, which Trump doesn't actually want to grant them. And so at one point offered them, you'll recall, a deal to cut the United States in on the rare earth minerals mining and oil and gas mining wealth of Ukraine. But apparently the full demand letter itself is just following the same pattern. Apparently that's just a Trump item from his book and his negotiating style, just that he makes some kind of crazy demands up front as an opening negotiating position. And I guess both Ukraine and Harvard have been made aware of that and understand that really it doesn't even matter what his opening offer is. It's going to be too crazy for you to contemplate, and you should just go ahead and reject it. So there you go, have it. Two instances in which something similar happened, and so therefore I'm ready to write a book.
Well, academics will look at it and say, this is an Overton window style of negotiation where you try to push everything to one side with a outrageous demand and like normal people, especially those who live in New York and know this guy, say he's a mob boss. This is how he's always done stuff.
Yeah.
And there's nothing fancy about it, and you got to say no.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not much choice. You don't even have to study it as a tactic to know. I can't say yes.
And why people, especially newspaper people, media people, don't understand this, don't write about it this way, don't take this at, well, the president has made a dignified approach to one of the universities, one of the hallowed universities, and they've discussed at a high level exactly what, come on, he's a mob boss.
Yeah. Well, yes, certainly the way he acts and it tends to take his cues there. I don't know if I'm going to find this thing. It's so buried in here, but take my word for it. I can probably look it up fast. I can Google it and get an article faster than I find the one I put aside. But it is interesting to scroll back and see a number of other things that are related that have been waiting, including something we read a little bit earlier about an AEI article about Trump's comprehensive guide to overhauling, as they say, higher education, and the attempt to destroy Columbia, written up in Inside Higher Ed, that somebody tipped me off about before, that basically lays out the playbook of exactly what they're going to do. And it took, I guess, initially Columbia by surprise, but now that they've been so open about it, I guess I hope it helped inform Harvard's response, and I'm sure even without it, it was pretty obvious what they were doing and that they were trying to get capitulation right away.
Yeah, and at the very least, Trump doing this to Columbia first before it hit Harvard allowed Harvard to prepare just a bit.
Yes.
But I think Larry Summers is right. The extremity of the demand made it easier to say, this is ridiculous. No, I'm tearing it up in front of your face.
Yeah, good. I wonder if they were insulted at Harvard. Like, why are they targeting Columbia before us? We're Harvard. Should be targeting us initially.
Well, C comes before H,
What?
It does. Look at the alphabet.
Oh, yes, right. Oh, okay. Yes, all right. I see what you mean. Yes, that's true. They were just working their way down the list. So
sure.
I guess so.
I'm surprised they didn't do Adelphi first.
Yeah, right. I'm trying to think. What's first on the list? Is Adelphi alphabetically the very first?
I don't know. They could do Adelphi, then they could
Aardvark University.
And then finally, they got to Columbia.
AAA University. You learn how to tow cars and change tires.
Right.
Could be. I don't know.
Right. Before they got to Honest John's diplomas. Yeah. So Public Notice has a piece, college, which again is overarching and stuff we know, but again, surprising that everybody doesn't, by Noah Berlatsky. The devious purpose behind MAGA's incessant lying, creating a fog of confusion, is a feature, not a bug. I like to call it chaos. They call it confusion, but we've said since 2016 when he was elected that he's a chaos agent, and that's all part of this.
Yes.
Earlier this month, Noah says, J.D. Vance claimed on Fox News, I guess that was before he broke the trophy. Earlier this month, J.D. Vance claimed on Fox News that 40% of people calling the Social Security hotline are actually committing fraud.
Well,
completely discredited lie. Impossible to believe Vance doesn't know this. In fact, he admitted not so long ago he likes to create stories so American media actually pays attention. That's a quote. In other words, he thinks false propaganda is a good way to advance his reactionary agenda. Social Security balderdash is a lie with a long history. The right has for close to 150 years used charges of fraud and corruption to target social programs and disfavored groups. That
seems like a long time.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, right. They have not been doing that at Harvard.
I'm glad we're not measuring this on Scaramucci's. These lies are effective because they leverage anti-government sentiment and prejudice. They also work because opposition politicians struggle to recognize and call out fascist bad faith. In other words, the right is really good at looking at Obama doing something truthfully and saying, you lie. But Democrats have trouble saying you lie to something that is just a lie because it's rude.
Yes. You're misleading.
Yeah,
I question the
you're
foundation of
incorrect.
your assertion.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
That's an unsupportable claim.
Distortions.
Yes. If Democrats are going to defend Social Security, and I had to read that carefully, it didn't say defund, it said defend
Yeah.
Social Security,
Right.
the social safety net, and even cancer research, we need to get accustomed to saying unequivocally, lies are lies, and comfortable recognizing them as a deliberate effort to confuse and demoralize. Hence, the MAGA war on fraud, fascism, corruption, you name it. The article has a lot of stuff. Looking at this history and at the rank corruption of Trump in office, it's very clear how much projection there is in the MAGA charges of waste, fraud, and abuse,
Yes.
which is the same thing as saying that every Republican accusation is a confession.
Yes, that's a nice shorthand for it.
But as the full extent of the Doge assault on the social safety net, the Constitution, and Congress's spending authority became clear, Democrats backed off their Musk-curious approach. Sanders has attacked Musk ferociously. Jared Moskowitz has been engaged in a good bit of backpedaling about being nice. It's good that Democrats eventually recognize Doge for what it is, but swallowing the bait in the first place was unwise. It gave Musk unnecessary legitimacy and credibility. That's part of the reason why it's important to fight Trump from the beginning. And when he makes outrageous demands, say, no, this is ridiculous and you're ridiculous.
Yes. Okay.
That's what you need to do. Musk isn't at war with corruption, writes No. He's at war with equality and liberty. And he sees equality and liberty as corrupt because they undermine the pure, untrammeled rule of billionaires, fascists, and kings. So call it what it is.
All right, I'm for that.
Paul Krugman, in a more academic approach, Democrats should not support tariffs.
Okay.
And if it's too long and you don't want to read it, it's basically, no, you don't have to hand it to them.
Yeah, all right.
Oh, I got to hand it to them. Sometimes tariffs. No, they're not.
Yeah, everybody has.
They're not. And not only that,
but
union households don't like them. There's no political reason why you have to say that. Why are you even saying that? And from Gretchen Whitmer to various and sundry Democrats saying, well, targeted tariffs have a role. Even if they do, this is not the time to do this and split hairs and say, just say no. People understand straight talk. Stop bullshitting.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know why it's the same Democratic proclivity we were just talking about a minute ago. You know, to categorically say tariffs can never, ever, ever. Well, what about this one?
I didn't say they can never help. I said they're bad.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, I guess, but right.
Let's argue about whether or not they're bad. You want to argue about when to do them? I'm telling you they're bad.
All right.
Now, if you want to make one happen, you better have a good reason and come up with good. This is not hard to say.
That's true. You should at least be able to say that. There's language for that. Look, that's the heavily disfavored approach to anything. Are there times when it's the better choice? Well, let's see. Nuclear
I'm sure
war
there's always an
tariffs.
exception
Yes,
to the rule,
I'll take the
but
tariff.
this is the rule. Tariffs are bad.
Yeah. Good point. But I wondered whether maybe. Oh, never mind. I was going to say in certain, in tying the tariffs bad thing to other terminology that expresses the same ideology, you run into loaded terms like free trade. That's going to get some people worried, I guess. But yeah, generally speaking, I mean, well, free. Well, that's better, right?
Free trade. Oh yeah, fair trade.
Yeah.
Do you know what any of these terms mean? No, but at least each side has something to yell at each other for.
True.
And let's get down to what we actually want to do. Krugman says we shouldn't be trying to restore U.S. manufacturing. Is that what you're saying? Well, let me make 3 points. Number one, Trump's tariffs will hurt, not help manufacturing.
Okay.
Period. Clear. 2, if you want to promote manufacturing, you do it through industrial policy, not tariffs. 3, good jobs don't have to be in manufacturing, and manufacturing jobs aren't necessarily good. That's why there's all these memes about, Trump assembling metal lies, L-I-E-S, these objects, the L, the I made out of metal on an assembly line, screwing in little things. That's your manufacturing job.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a good job. And people don't want to work in factories. They want to work in offices.
Yeah, all things considered. I know there are lots of people who love to work with their hands, but
Sure. Let
not
them.
so that they get chopped off.
Right.
You don't want that.
If you're an automotive
Like
mechanic and
without
that's
your
what you
hands,
do,
that's
that's
terrible.
wonderful.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, they are going over the top. I think I saw circulating the other. I guess the Trump administration was like put out a poster like, hey, I don't know, like, hey kids. I don't know who they were talking to, but you should look into working in the mining industry. And they showed these pictures of coal miners. But I mean, they've just been to work. It's dirty work, and they look like they've been working very hard, and they're very dirty, and it's not the sort of thing that you say, if you're exploring career possibilities, maybe you want to, I don't know, shelve books in the library, flip burgers. How about underground and poison your lungs? Yes, I'll have some of that.
Joey Politano
Yeah.
over at Blue Sky summarized the brilliance of the Trump policy
Okay.
because it all makes so much sense. Import Chinese battery, 145% tariff.
Yeah.
Import Chinese battery inside Chinese laptop, 20% tariff.
Hey.
Import Chinese battery inside Vietnamese laptop, 0% tariff.
Hey, what now?
Effing brilliant. A plus work here.
Yeah.
I'm so glad there are such smart people working on our trade policy.
Right.
So
There's your targeted tariffs.
Yeah, so the uncertainty of changing your tariff mind every hour because I have to keep everybody off balance.
Yeah.
I mean, a deliberate tactic is ridiculous and stupid, and people need to say, "Look, this is ridiculous and stupid."
Yeah, let it lie for a while. Choose a policy, stick with it. But when you change your mind and you're just uncertain of the economics behind it, the terminology. You've used clip instead of magazine several times now. Trump saying, back in that golden era, tariffs were the only. What did he say? Tariffs were the only form of money, and I think he meant to say the only form of revenue for the federal government. But for whatever reason, he's only able to put together the sentence as the only form of money, which it most decidedly was not.
So Krugman finishes by saying the point is that Democrats shouldn't engage in Trumpian nostalgia for an industrial era that isn't coming back. They should be pushing for policies that'll make jobs better in the 21st century, not harken back to a rose-colored vision of America in 1955. And they should never, ever say that Trump's tariffs have a point, because they don't.
Okay.
So you do not have to hand it to them.
Yeah, that's the main takeaway. Yes, it's true in an academic setting you can talk about places where certain types of tariffs are better than annihilation. But then
I'd like to
who
talk
cares?
about that poor fellow who's stuck in El Salvador in that
You may.
prison.
Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
I don't know what's going on.
No one knows. Not even the two presidents in charge.
The judge who's trying to, get the case moving along.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where we stand now, is a series of hearings in front of Judge Zinnis in Maryland. And I believe they're due back today. And I think...
And every day.
Yes. They have to report their progress every day. And they complained bitterly about that. But they've been reporting late and reporting nothing. And so I think today she's demanded that there be some officialdom called into the courtroom to answer questions personally.
Right,
and we'll see what
the
happens
lawyers
with
don't
them.
know anything. All they say is, we're not at liberty to say.
Right.
So the government's going to come in, and I presume they're going to say it's a state secret, it's none of your business.
Yes. Which is not, usually not applicable, and the judge, I think, is ready for that, and we'll let them know. But those of us at home should know the state secrets privilege is rarely, possibly never, applicable as against the judges in this. It's an excuse you use to keep certain information from public dissemination, but in order to make that determination, did you properly assert the privilege here, the judge has to be able to review material in camera, in chambers, without making a public record of it. But it's not something that you can use to say, oh no, I don't even want to allow you to make the decision about whether or not I've invoked the privilege properly. It just is. That's not the way it works. So, or as we sometimes use the sound effect for it. And I think this is the judge is actually getting to this point. She's very controlled in courtroom, generally speaking, but it's getting near that time.
Oh, come on, says Trump. The judge loves me so much.
Yeah.
They want me in her office so that they could take pictures of me. It says right here in camera.
Yeah.
Obviously,
You may believe that.
Yeah, I'm on the front page of everything. I'm not surprised.
The word is that she's proceeding very deliberately in a way that will build a very traditional case so that the foundation is rock solid. If she's going to find herself having to hold officials in contempt, you'll laugh because Donald Trump would get this message. 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But apparently that time frame came up repeatedly in proceedings yesterday, and some of the lawyers and legal reporters who were watching were saying that that's this didn't ring a bell with me, but apparently that's sort of a standard minimum time frame that you would give a party in court to comply before slapping them at long last with contempt proceedings. Like, I'm going to give you 2 weeks to get yourself right here. And that should allow for any contingency that might conceivably get in the way of your willing compliance. You have 2 weeks to clear that off the decks and get to compliance, after which
Even
we
if
assume
your grandmother
you're just a
dies, you
contender.
still have time to recover and show up in court.
Yeah, things like that. She also was saying, listen, this is going to be a very aggressive schedule. Usually I'm very accommodating of things like people with vacations scheduled or whatever, but not this time. You don't really get that privilege anymore.
You've run out of goodwill.
Yeah, exactly. So she's started the clock on contempt. She's going to try and drag them in. It won't happen today, tomorrow, the next day. But she's setting it up for she'll want to hold people in contempt. They may save themselves at the last minute. That's also what the 2 week period is sometimes about. So it would be kind of, almost anticlimactic to see them do that. But the point here is, if and when I have to hold somebody in contempt, they're obviously going to appeal that immediately, and I want to be on rock solid ground when they do so.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm going to end my segment today with a piece from Politico magazine.
Where? Politico
magazine.
Okay.
The magazine pieces often are a little bit more in depth than the gossipy stuff they have on the front page.
They're glossy.
But so if you're tired of hearing about Trump, let me tell you about what Trump is doing to the elections in Canada.
Canada?
Yeah.
Okay.
What the polls in Canada are really saying, a top Canadian pollster explains how Trump completely upended the election. And she, Catherine Kim, the author, starts out by saying conservatives in Canada could be forgiven for celebrating earlier this year. Their nemesis, Justin Trudeau, announced he was resigning, and polls showed they would romp to victory whenever the election was called, except one longtime Canadian pollster soon began to see a very different story. Frank Graves started to notice a sudden and unexpected downward trend for conservatives. At the time, Graves was ridiculed online, especially because of his reputation as a liberal supporter, that's capital L, strongly opposed to conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. But as Donald Trump talks more and more about tariffs and annexing Canada, Graves and the rest of the country watched as the Conservative Party's 25-point lead evaporated. Now, Graves predicts a pretty comfortable win for Mark Carney and his fellow liberals. Carney's a conservative banker, so he's in a unique position to pick up conservative support. This is unprecedented, Graves says in an interview with Politico magazine. I've never seen a transformation of our voter landscape in Canada of that nature. So they interviewed him.
Oh, well, all right.
What did you see that others didn't? Well, we started seeing some movement at the beginning of the year. We had the Liberals, who were the incumbents, at a historic, at least in the 21st century, low of 19 points. Yeah. Imagine the Democrats getting 19 points.
I'd like to imagine it.
I'd rather imagine the Republicans getting 19 points, but that's a pretty low number.
All
Basically tied with the left-leaning New Democratic Party, or NDP.
Lead.
Since then, we've seen a straight line movement. The 25-point lead was erased. Now, nobody else saw that, so I faced a lot of skepticism. Conservatives were unhappy to see a race. It looked like they could just sip beer and cut the engines. and cruise to a majority, and all of a sudden I see this. The Liberals in my
He's
latest
the only
numbers, they'd get a massive 200-seat majority. Now I think they'll probably fall back a little, but they're going to have a cushion. And I have to tell you, I've never seen a transformation of our voter landscape in Canada of that nature.
Okay. How many
Then he
seats are
goes
in
on-
the parliament there? I'll have to look that up.
I don't know. I don't think it's as big as New Hampshire, but I guess they have a lot.
Hmm.
So he says he polls a lot. He polls every day, unlike other people. He's tracking this.
Uh-huh.
And then Politico says, well, how much of this is due to Donald Trump? And he says, well, biggest factor, shock and awe at announcements we've heard, not just about annexation and tariffs, but also the general flavor, the cavalcade of announcements. Yeah, we're going to build a resort in Gaza. We're going to give part of Ukraine back to the Russians. We won't talk to
The whole
Zelensky
thing.
about it. RFK. I asked people,
Wow.
do you think the Trump administration has been about what you expected, much worse and much better? And the yardstick wasn't very high. Canadians weren't expecting it was going to be great. And virtually everybody says, oh, this is way worse than we thought.
Hmm. Well, not
This
surprising.
isn't what I voted for because I didn't vote in that election, but it's
Well,
not what I wanted.
Yeah, well, you don't get much say in that. By the way, 338 members of the House of Commons. So to have a 200-seat
That's a lot.
chunk is, that's 200 to 138. Be almost a 2-to-1.
Also, national identity in Canada, which had been at a 35-year low, started going up as Canadians kind of got, oh, they're going to annex us? I don't think so. It produced this really dramatic rise in national attachment, which is the main factor that propelled the Liberals to their elevated position. And if you want to see this work out in real life, just remember all those stories about Canadians taking U.S. products off the grocery store shelves.
Yeah.
Shelves.
Yeah.
An interesting phenomenon here is the same forces which produced Trump the first time in Brexit are very much at play in Canada. We measure, we don't like to label right-wing authoritarian populism, but that's what it is. We measure that with some simple questions on child rearing, like, is it more important to emphasize obedience or creativity?
Okay.
And these measure a type of outlook which is incredibly powerful in predicting Trump support.
Sure. I can
It wouldn't
see
have
that.
been a good factor or predictor a decade ago, but now it is.
Hmm.
Now, the average conservative supporter is not a little more likely to approve of Trump. They're 25 times more likely.
Oh.
They're 25 times more likely to have a favorable outlook on the Freedom Convoy. That's that
Ah, yeah. The
Ottawa truck convoy we covered.
Traffic. They had traffic in Ottawa once.
And they are almost on that scale more likely to believe all kinds of disinformation. About 25% of voters would fall in that category. And that's why I said to you earlier that 25, 30% is in every country.
Yeah, even Canada.
Even Canada.
They're
All with
sorry,
the exception of those who voted for the People's Party, which has largely been swallowed up by the conservatives. But the conservative leader, to get 45 points, he attracted 20% of voters who didn't share those characteristics. They weren't institutionally mistrustful. They were status quo conservatives. They were lapsed liberals who were sick of Trudeau. They don't believe climate change is a hoax. They like the country. And those are the people that dropped the conservatives and went back to liberals.
Okay.
So those who didn't like Biden can still come back.
All right.
That's what I take out of this.
I see. In Canada.
So why does Mark Carney, the liberal candidate that replaced Trudeau, what sort of advantages does he have? Well, he's a banker. He's more likely to be seen as competent, trustworthy in areas that aren't good areas for liberal leaders, like the economy. I mean, if in Canada, like in the U.S., you automatically say crime in the economy and immigration are good for Republicans, whereas healthcare and good government and democracy are good for Democrats.
Yeah.
Well, if you appoint a banker, you steal conservative trust on the economy.
Yeah, I mean, well, if they're being honest, and some portion of them
those,
won't be.
those advantages just aren't there for the conservatives anymore.
Yeah. All right. I think so. It's we still
then
believe
another
that
funny
about
thing
bankers.
So that's the background.
Yeah.
And the conservative candidate had been nurturing a lot of the populist forces. I mean, I had written on Twitter a couple of times, I don't understand why he's throwing his arms around Trump. He'd run a very disciplined campaign. Trudeau bad, Canada's broken, axe the tax. And all of a sudden, Trump comes in. Canadians are recoiling from this existential threat to sovereignty, ours,
yeah.
that
Theirs.
stuff started ringing hollow. And all of a sudden, he needs to pivot, and he has trouble pivoting.
Well,
It's very hard to abandon a framework that's been effective when you're that close to winning the government. But the second problem is he was compromised because within his core constituency, they weren't alarmed by these things. They like Trump. They don't want him to change.
Oh.
So when you're caught like that, I mean, that's what happened to Harris in the election. The Biden people didn't want her to abandon Biden, and the non-Biden people did. And you can't satisfy both at the same time. So she didn't have total unity of all people who dislike Trump. It hurt her in the polls. And this is the Canadian who's trying to satisfy his 25% nut jobs while still keeping the other 20% who don't like the liberals.
Yeah.
And he can't do both at the same time.
Okay.
They've tried labeling Carney as another Trudeau. They can't with
they just can't with
Poilievre embracing Trump, and Trump wants to annex Canada.
That's not going to go
Poilievre can't therefore restyle himself as Captain Canada, who's going to protect our sovereign. He can't because he's already, thrown his support to the guy who wants to take it.
That's a huge mistake.
They've tried going after him on ethics issues, Carney, but in our testing on this stuff, says the pollster, they haven't figured out a message that's resonating, so they're in trouble.
Okay.
And the election's coming up pretty quick. I think it's going to be at the end of the month, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they don't have the set timing thing for but I guess they have to call them pretty soon. All right. Well, good. I hope they get it over and done with and quickly, and the results are as positive as they say. It would be real.
Right. So Stan Greenberg gave this pollster a message. He said, Frank, there's three things that win an election: emotion, emotion, and emotion.
Aha. Well, that's easy to understand.
So when people are really pissed at Trump, it matters.
Okay, good. And it may change the results up north. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Gosh, I'm not sure which direction and where at this point. There are so many things that I mentioned along the way that would make excellent tangents, but I teased at the beginning this latest story, and Greg has provided me with a gift link to the story about the latest story about how weird Elon Musk actually is. And I mean, that's important. And, a lot of us will lament hearing that again, like, oh my gosh, we were so close. And why was it that we allowed political consultants to talk us out of the weird attack that was just resonating with not just Elon Musk, but Trump himself and everybody surrounding them? And it really is rather amazing. And I did see somebody mentioned on Blue Sky earlier today. I didn't put it aside, but a good point nonetheless. I wish I had put it aside so I could credit them with it, but they were just basically saying with each article that comes out, let me see if I can hunt it down here, about Elon Musk, every time they reveal something even weirder about him than you previously thought, yeah, here it is. Beijing Palmer, Blue Sky. Beijing Palmer. Okay, I don't think I've run into this person before, but as it happens, deputy editor at Foreign Policy magazine and a China nerd, if you didn't guess that from Beijing Palmer. But pardoning the language, which we are doing these days, pretty much everything that has come out about Elon Musk makes Walter Isaacson look like a really shitty biographer. Yeah, he wrote that glowing biography, and he was under attack for it right away and has been ever since. But yeah, you start to wonder, where are these major themes about his inherent weirdness and corruption, really, and amorality in this supposedly comprehensive biography? For instance, you might wonder how you missed this story. There's another story which I could say I understand how it was missed in a biography because it's criminal, so you would want to conceal it. But this is something that is supposedly an open and part of Elon's philosophy of life, and he's very supposedly proud of. I assume he's secretly not particularly proud of it, but anyway. So I'll just give it to you straight here from the Wall Street Journal. The tactics Elon Musk uses to manage his, quote, legion, and that's important usage of the word, it's a very deliberate use of the word, legion of babies and their mothers. Now, this first came to my attention in reading through Blue Sky and watching Josh Marshall read this story and react to this story and post screenshots of his reading. And I guess what really struck him at that point was, let me see if I can find that post, that he was, I guess, obsessed with the idea that Elon had a guy who managed his family office. It says here, sometimes you don't need a family office. You need a family, all caps, office. And what exactly are we talking about? But he's talking about this guy whose, I guess, last name is Birchall. We'll find out who he is when we read the article. It says his public job is running Musk's family office. And I'm not immediately sure what that even's supposed to be. But, I guess if you have, come from a tremendously wealthy family and you have tremendous wealth, you would have to have a family office, whatever that means. Anyway, and this guy Birchall recently helped organize Musk's more than $250 million push in support of Donald Trump's election. But behind the scenes, Birchall also manages the financial and privacy deals Musk wants for the women raising the world's richest man's babies. And remember, he is that kind of weird natalist nutcase that, is exemplified by, and the Wall Street Journal? Yeah, maybe the Wall Street Journal is doing it too. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, these kinds of papers consistently coming back and profiling not only the weirdo natalist movement, but the two very weird, like odd duck looking wackadoodles that married one another who apparently exemplify this total commitment to the natalist approach, yet have 3 kids or something like that, which is, that's half a Brady Bunch. That's crazy. What are you focusing on? It's just that they look weird. They are cosplaying, but I don't know. Anyway, Elon Musk is apparently into this too, and it's very weird. And, here's the story. The tactics Elon Musk uses to manage his legion of babies and their mothers. And it has to be phrased that way because he's only been married to 1 or 2 of them, and the rest of them, basically this guy Birchall is in charge of, and when Elon Musk sees somebody and says, there's a hot girl on Twitter, I want you to contact her and find out if she'd be interested in having one of my babies. What? That still has to be your job, man. But apparently not. Anyway, the world's richest man, the subheader says, juggles more than a dozen children and harem drama, along with running his companies and advising Trump. So he's got lots of time for video gaming. He recently took a paternity test in a battle with one woman over money and privacy. Okay. Let's read about how weird he is and why it's horrible. The article is illustrated with a photo of one of the more controversial recent Elon Musk baby mamas, Ashley St. Clair, who has been in a very public fight with him, although the fight is over finding out that he's a face-eating leopard. So, duh. I don't feel a great deal of sympathy. But anyway, Dana Mattioli is the author of this piece, Mattioli, in case you're looking it up. Ashley St. Clair wanted to prove that Elon Musk was the father of her newborn baby. I didn't realize that was in contention. But to ask the billionaire to take a paternity test, the right-wing social media influencer had to go through Musk's longtime fixer, Jared Birchall. So already you have a weird, bizarro triangle going on here. Elon Musk, himself very bizarre, has a baby with somebody who describes themselves as a right-wing social media influencer. That's trouble right there. That's just like a blaring dome light siren. What do you do? I'm a social media influencer. Make no connection with this person. Have no children with this person. And then to throw Jared Birchall in the middle of it, I don't know what Jared is like, but it's not going to make anything better. Anyway, I don't want my son to feel like he's a secret, St. Clair told Birchall in a 2-hour phone call in December. And also, signal number 2, 2-hour phone call. I mean, that's what we do here. That's a show, not a phone call. Birchall offered St. Clair some advice. His boss was a, quote, very big-hearted, kind, and generous person, he said. But Musk has a different side, or had a different side. When a mother of his child goes, quote, the legal route, unquote, in these discussions, that always leads to a worse outcome for that woman than what it would have been otherwise, Birchall told the 26-year-old. Plus, he said, Musk wasn't even sure the child was his. It wasn't the first such conversation for Birchall. His public job is running Musk's family office, and he recently helped organize Musk's more than $250 million push in support of Donald Trump's election. Behind the scenes, Birchall also manages the financial and privacy deals Musk wants for the women raising the world's richest man's babies. Awkward phrasing, but it's necessary, right? Musk has had at least 14 children with 4 women. Family values. Anyway, including the pop musician Grimes and Siobhan Zillis, an executive at his brain computer company Neuralink. Great for workplace productivity. Multiple sources close to the tech entrepreneur said they believe the true number of Musk's children is much higher than publicly known. And I think that there is something that he thinks, a privilege that he thinks his money has bought him. I can take care of them all, so it doesn't really matter whether it doesn't matter how many I have, and it doesn't matter what my relationship with their mother is either. And I don't know. Plus, I think it's fairly obvious he gets some like actual sexual gratification from just having reproduced so often, even if he's not actually having sexual relations with the women he's impregnating. I mean, in some cases, as we know, apparently he hands out vials of sperm like party favors. Here, take this home and have one of my babies. Anyway, whatever. Musk offered St. Clair $15 million and $100,000 a month in support in exchange for her silence about the child, whom they named Romulus, 'cause that's normal. Similar agreements had been negotiated with other mothers of Musk's children, Birchall told St. Clair, but Romulus is, normal compared to XAI1, whatever the hell it was supposed to be, who's the one he's toting around with him. I haven't seen him lately in D.C., though. Has he gone back to the mom? I don't know. The fight with St. Clair over the terms of the deal for their baby has been going on as Musk has assumed one of the most influential roles in the U.S. government. But of course, when he gets to court, he pretends he doesn't have a role in the U.S. government. As a top advisor to President Trump, he's been slashing staff and billions of dollars from the federal government, and yet somehow producing no savings with it. As the head of the so-called, I'll add, Department of Government Efficiency, with massive benefit programs such as Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare in the crosshairs. Some illustrating photos, one of Musk, one of Jared Birchall, so you get some sense of what he looks like. Musk's baby-making project is relevant to his ambition for NASA. How do you like that? How so? Which he wants to move faster to go to Mars. He said on X that making people multiplanetary is, quote, critical to ensuring the long-term survival of humanity and all life as we know it, which may or may not be worth saving, but put that out there. In Musk's dark view of the world, civilization is under threat because of a declining population, which, again, it's not. The declining population is perhaps white people, northern hemisphere white people, North Americans, and Europeans. But I don't think there's any decline in the human population. So every time that comes up, it's like, why don't you just say you're racist, right? I mean, there's billions and billions of people on the planet. What are you talking about? Anyway, he is driven to correct the historic moment by helping seed the earth with more human beings of high intelligence, according to people familiar with the matter. And again, when you're talking about a population of multiple billions of people, even one guy with $300 billion just isn't going to be able to impregnate enough people to make a significant difference. Now, he might think, well, I can get 100 such people to do it. I can get 1,000. I can even get 1,000,000 such people to do it. And I guess that could make a dent. But one, I don't know if it's sustainable. And two, not in a sea of billions. No, I just don't think so. I think this is just like what a tech bro mind goes through to justify, like, what is essentially, the teenage male fantasy of, well, this girl is unattainable to me and I have no reason to believe that she even knows of my existence. But what if we were the last two people on Earth, and in order to perpetuate the species, we had to have sex? Like, this is the kind of thing that a teenage boy would think about with this unattainable girl. And well, it's never answered the question of whether the girl would at that point say, yeah, we should, repopulate the planet. She could just be like, well, she could be a very reasonable and thoughtful and sober person and say, you know what, at this stage of the game, we have bigger problems. And I just don't see like our 1, 2, 3, or even 10 babies really doing much to save the planet at this point. We're the last two humans here. If we have 10 kids, then we're going to repopulate the whole planet with one inbred gang of 10 of us? Like, no. Pretty soon we'll die off just from that. Just the lack of biodiversity will kill us. We can't repopulate the planet. Oh. Well, I was just really thinking about, like, how can we occupy ourselves and not get bored? There's nothing to do on this planet anymore, and I thought maybe sex would be a good diversion. Well, it won't be. I mean, hunting and gathering food, I think, would be a better distraction, for instance. I don't want to die. I don't want to perpetuate life on this planet, not with you, but, and that's very difficult for them to accept. That's the ultimate rejection, really. So it only makes things worse at that point. But yeah, basically, this is just a grandiose version of that. And so, and I guess just like annexing Canada is the grandiose version of I have a girlfriend there. You wouldn't know her. So I don't know what to tell you, but it's not a great idea. Anyway, back to the article here. In Musk's dark view of the world, they help in glorifying this into some kind of, philosophy. But it is really just an adolescent fantasy gone wild, in my view. In Musk's dark view of the world, civilization's under threat because of a declining population, which it is not. Civilization's under threat because of an increasing population, to the extent that it's under any sort of threat having to do with population. An increasing population we can't feed, house, or shelter from the elements at this stage of the game. He is driven to correct the historic moment by helping seed the earth with more human beings. He thinks human beings of high intelligence, meaning his babies. We don't know how high his intelligence is. His businesses are set up to serve the idea in more ways than one, I would add. Here, they'll be trying to talk about the mission of the companies being aligned with this philosophy. The reality, though, is I have companies and money, and people want jobs and security to come from that money. And I sometimes, for the women there, make that money and security contingent on agreeing to have my babies, which is sort of my sexual fantasy. And so I'm going to do that. That's how I align my companies with this philosophy. The philosophy is a disguise for the perversion that I've got. His businesses are set up to serve the idea. Ready for the mainstream way of saying this? The main objective of SpaceX is to build a rocket ship capable of getting to Mars. So what? But in the meantime, I'm going to have sex with a lot of people because they think money and grandiose visions are cool, I guess. No, I'm going to populate, we're going to colonize Mars. Yeah. I mean, I don't really understand how that has anything to do with you having sex and or children with a lot of women. Well, somebody's got to go to, there's 8 billion people. Send some of those to Mars. I don't know. So, okay, let's say the main objective of SpaceX is to build a rocket ship capable of getting to Mars. I don't understand why I have to take my pants off. What does that have to do with anything? And as other companies, including electric car maker Tesla, help finance the plan. So that's the grand vision here. Well, I want to save humanity. How? Colonize Mars. Okay, so SpaceX, right. So why do you have the Boring Company? That's the opposite direction from going to Mars. It helps finance things. Tesla can't drive to Mars, helps finance things. Neuralink helps finance things. Look, it's all help finance things. Getting to Mars and financing. That's it. It's not a great plan, but the Wall Street Journal does their best to turn it into one. Speaking of the opposite thing, it just reminded me for some reason when I was thinking of the natalist thing. Scott sent me an article about they just recently had a natalist conference of some kind, which is the excuse for running more pictures of these weirdo Chicken Little figures that they used to illustrate the same people, the cosplayers with the 3 babies. But I was wondering about just the concept of a natalist conference. Like, do you need to have a conference about that? Because if you do, then you're having, maybe that points at the trouble you're having reproducing. But I mean, is the mission not clear? Have more babies so they get together and nod at each other. Yeah, have more babies. Yeah. How do we want to attack that problem? Pregnancies, how to put it, medically. Conference over. Everybody go home and do it. I mean, literally go home and do it because that's it. What do you have a conference about? Well, what do you do when you get one of these babies? To show people how to diaper them? I don't know what you do. I guess you have conferences discussing the philosophy to make yourself feel better. I'm not a pervert. I'm a philosopher. Okay, sure. Musk refers to his offspring as a legion. Remember that? I told you that was an important terminology. Why? It's a reference to the ancient military units that could contain thousands of soldiers and were key to extending the reach of the Roman Empire. Oh, wait, I might even have some music for that. One of the fanfares that I was saying. Here, the battle horn fanfare. Yeah. The Legion of Babies. Actually kind of works. All right. So it's important to have 10, 15, 16 kids because that's the same thing as a Roman legion. A bunch of babies is going to conquer Gaul. That's awesome. You're a super effing philosopher. Oh, God. During St. Clair's pregnancy, Musk suggested that they bring in, you ready for this? No, it's not pervert. I'm not a pervert. I'm a philosopher. During St. Clair's pregnancy, Musk suggested that they bring in other women, let's say, to have even more children faster, to reach, what? You're cheating on me? You're a pervert? No. To reach legion level before the apocalypse. Okay. He said to St. Clair in a text message viewed by the Wall Street Journal, to reach legion level before the apocalypse, we will need to use surrogates. Isn't that something? So we're having a baby together. Maybe they had a relationship on top of it all. It sounds like maybe they did. But I need to bring in other women. What? You're going to cheat on me already? The baby's barely even born. Like Donald Trump. But no, I'm just trying to reach legion level before the apocalypse. By the way, marching to the apocalypse with a legion of babies, you'll lose. Now, the apocalypse isn't for another, let's say, 25 years. So all my children will be of military age by that point. And he's training them by giving them piggyback rides around the White House, apparently. Rough go of it. This training for the apocalypse. Anyway, he has recruited potential mothers on his social media platform, X, according to some of the people. By the way, what does X, Twitter, do for the big push to get to Mars? Nothing. Finance, again, I guess, except that it's losing money hand over fist. What's it actually doing? It's a dating app for Elon Musk. I see somebody with a hot picture make America hot again. They're having a party at Butterworth's, we found out yesterday. Bring her in, Jared, whatever the guy's name is. I want you to arrange for there to be a baby in her, however that happens, because we got to hurry up. Legion time. All right. He's recruited potential mothers on his social media platform X, according to some of the people. Musk has used his wealth to buy the silence of some women who have his kids, according to St. Clair, as well as other people. Text messages and documents reviewed by the Journal. And I'm sure there are more than a few women out there who would say, whatever it takes, even if it means having sex with Elon Musk. But I think you can get around that. He's willing to just give you a vial of sperm and let you do it scientifically. Fine, whatever. It's humiliating, but I'll get a chunk of money, and maybe it's actually worth it. I would imagine they think about things like that over at Butterworth's from time to time. Non-disclosure clauses are part of some of the payment agreements. If the mothers push back or seek outside counsel, Musk advisors, including Birchall, have threatened financial retribution, according to the documents and the people. So no wonder he fits into the Trump campaign and administration so well. Birchall described Musk's expectations to St. Clair. Privacy and confidentiality is the top of the list in every aspect of his life, every aspect. And his entire world is set up to be like a meritocracy, but with sex in it, I guess, apparently. Benefits flow, he said, when, quote, people do good work, like allow that sex to happen. During the call with Birchall, St. Clair told him she had received outreach from a woman Musk had invited to have his baby. She said she was being caught up in Musk's harem drama. Like, look, you paid me to have the child. I've had it. Why do I have to talk to the other women? And why do there even have to be them? The details of Musk's baby mission are only now starting to spill into the public. Grimes begged Musk in February for help on X when one of their children was having a medical crisis because Musk wouldn't engage with her. What a dad. Earlier that month, after their 4-year-old son, also called X, had been on national television on his father's shoulders as he talked about government cuts in the Oval Office, Grimes posted that, quote, he should not be in public like this. And I assume that was Grimes's child that she was talking about. I don't know whether they mother one another's kids. A person familiar with Musk's thinking on the agreements with the mothers of his children said that Musk believes it is better to resolve these matters behind closed doors for the safety and security of the child. Yes. Next section here, make new humans. Ugh. Musk has warned that, quote, civilization is going to crumble, unquote, if people don't start having more children, a view popularized as pronatalism in right-wing circles, and also, by the way, not true. And civilization likely going to crumble if people have too many. That's actually the issue. But this is the new racism, I think, that they're just trying to disguise as natalism. But essentially, at bottom, again, it's egocentrism, right? Yeah, civilization's going to crumble if there aren't more of me out there. The pronatalism movement is composed of people concerned about the birth rate, and eager to implement policy and cultural solutions to the problem. It is incels looking to legislate the necessity of the women they target to have sex with them. It's a planetary rescue mission. I'm as sad about this as you are, but the law is the law. You're just simply going to have sex with me. I'm sorry. It's the adolescent fantasy as policy. Martin Varsavsky, is that right? A friend of Musk's who founded a large chain of in vitro fertilization clinics in the U.S., said he has spoken with Musk about the risks of falling birth rates. So apparently he's convinced of it too. Without babies, there's no future. Every problem becomes secondary to the problem of not having people on the planet. Where are they coming up with this? Elon believes that a country is not the geography, a country is the people, and that's why he's worried about it. It's not the planet. Oh, the planetary birth rate is falling. It isn't. I'm worried about countries, not the geography, the people. Yeah, okay. So certain places, you're worried about the fall in the population. It is really kind of disgusting. Speaking to an audience of an investment conference in Saudi Arabia last year, Musk laid out the urgency of the matter. Why are they listening to him? I think for most countries, they should view the birth rates as the single biggest problem they need to solve. Why? No. If you don't make new humans, there's no humanity, and all the policies in the world don't matter, Musk told the crowd over a live video. Okay, I have to get set for our third and final break here. This could easily occupy the entirety of the last segment. I don't know if that's entirely fair to all of us in our brains, but it is a pretty weird and revealing story. We'll throw in one small paragraph here before we break. When the interviewer joked that Musk was doing his part to address the issue, the billionaire agreed. Yes, I am. I mean, you've got to walk the talk. So I do have a lot of kids, and I encourage others to have a lot of kids. And it's not because he's got stamina and can do it all night. It's because he's handing out party favors of what. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So yeah, I don't know how much of this is being done in person and how much is being done in vitro, but yeah, I mean, I guess Elon is also looking for most people to make the assumption that the legions of children he's having is because he is such a fantastic sex master, when in fact he's just giving out party favors of vials of sperm and people, sending people to his friend's in vitro fertilization clinic. By the way, I would say that being the arrangement, I don't know whether he refers all these women to this clinic or not. They may have their choice of which clinic to go to, but if he's referring them all to his friend's clinic, I would put odds, about even odds, that the friend is just swapping his own sperm for Elon's, and that maybe a paternity test would be in order. I mean, I'm sure the guy, an Elon Musk pal who runs his own in vitro fertilization operation, almost certainly believes that he is the world-shaking genius, and maybe not necessarily not Elon, but certainly he's on a par with Elon, maybe even just a little bit smarter, but I don't like to tell him that because it upsets him. Sure. All right, so let's see. Separately, Musk has said he's concerned about what he called third world countries having higher birth rates than the U.S. and Europe, a person familiar with the conversation said, and that is what it's really all about. And come on. Give me a break. Anyway, one of the most important ways to change these dynamics, he has repeatedly told people close to him, is for educated people to have more children. In 2023, he had a meeting in Austin where people he described as Japanese officials asked him to be a sperm donor for a high-profile woman, according to a text message reviewed by the Journal. And this is the way all courtship should work, I think, in the future. They want me to be a sperm donor, no romance or anything, just sperm, he texted St. Clair. Musk later told her he gave his sperm to the person who asked for it without naming the woman. But, why does Ashley St. Clair care about that? She might, I don't really know, but it's not clear that she does care. I think here, it without saying so, again, if you're reading between the lines here, and what else are we going to do with this? This is Elon Musk's favorite kink. right? And he's going to manipulate, control, shame, neg, whatever, the new terminology that the kids today are using for this stuff, by telling St. Clair, you're not unique. I got 16, 20 of you on the line at any given time. I'm mailing sperm to Japan, for God's sake. And I want you to know that. Like, that's personal business. St. Clair doesn't care about that. She allegedly just wants to take care of her one baby. I don't even know. She's just as crazy as he is, probably. So who knows? Maybe she's angling. Maybe she's even angling for a second baby with him because she thinks that she'll be able to leverage more money out of it or more fame out of it. I don't have a great deal of respect for any of the people involved in this. Special status is the next section here. Let's read a little bit more. It's kind of fascinating. Vivian Wilson, one of Musk's older children from his first wife, Justine Musk. How do you like that? Back when he did things normally, apparently. Said recently to Teen Vogue that she doesn't know how many half-siblings she has in her family. Musk is now estranged from Vivian because he refuses to accept her identity as transgender. That's, I guess, one of the more famous of the Musk kids. Justine Musk had 6 children with Musk, but one child died as a baby, which I'm sure is absolutely tragic. I don't know whether it gets discussed or not, but whatever. I guess I have no comment on that, except Musk probably views that as a personal failing in some way. Grimes, whose legal name is Claire Boucher. Is it Boucher, B-O-U-C-H-E, or Boucher? I don't know. I always wondered about that. Anyway, does that mean she can't vote if the SAVE Act passes? All right. Anyway, Grimes has 3 young children with Musk. She and Musk went through a custody battle, but settled in August. Musk offered his sperm to Zillis. Well, I can't believe we're reading about this. And the two have 4 young children together. Zillis is viewed as a steadying force in Musk's life and is the most prominent of Musk's mothers. I didn't even realize that. He really wants smart people to have kids, so he encouraged me to, Zillis told Musk's biographer, Walter Isaacson. So I guess that's the line. Wow, this woman is really attractive. I don't think she might be out of my league, but I am a multi-billionaire. I guess nobody's out of my league because I'm the sort of person, who A, has accumulated this much money, and B, probably accumulated this much money in the belief and in the hope that it would be able to convince women who otherwise would be beyond my reach to put themselves in my reach in exchange for money. But that's interesting too. That's a good tactic. I don't know. I don't think so. Thanks for the offer, but no. Well, hear me out. My idea is we need to populate the earth with as many babies from smart people as possible. And you're such a genius. I tried the "you're so hot" thing. Yeah. That's not going to work with you. But you're so smart. You're such a genius. The earth needs your babies. I will give you the seed to make these babies. Oh, well, I didn't realize you were in it. You were after me because of my smarts. That will work with me. Let's do that thing. You give me a couple of vials of this stuff, and I'm going to go make some babies. But, I don't know whether he's having a relationship with them physically or not. I'm sure that's the aim, but a close second would for him be walking around the planet saying, "See that hot lady who's pregnant?" Yeah. And then letting everybody assume how it happened. The Yale University graduate, and come on, what else do you really want? Yale University graduate was the founding member of the investment team at Bloomberg Beta and made Forbes' 30 Under 30 venture capitalist in 2015. Zillis was also a board member at OpenAI and worked at Tesla earlier in her career. How do you think he got spotted? 2 people close to Musk described her as having special status, meaning Musk chooses to spend time at her home in Austin, as well as bringing her to high-profile public events. I will be seen with you. That gives you special status. In January, and by the way, what do you suppose that's based on? The smartness or the other part? Anyway, in January, Zillis attended a black tie pre-inauguration candlelit dinner with Musk and was photographed speaking to Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, and his fiancée, Lauren Sanchez. Weeks later, she was alongside Musk for a meeting with India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, at Blair House, the presidential guest house across the street from the White House, with two of their children and another of Musk's in tow. So she mothers a couple of them, even the ones she did not bear. And I remember seeing and commenting on that and wondering why Modi put up with it. What else? Pick a name. Why not? A little bit more. Talk about the weird names. While Musk posts sometimes dozens of times a day on X about right-wing politics or his companies, among other things on his mind, he often interacts with lesser-known users, trying to impregnate them, I guess. He replies to them and sometimes interacts through direct messages, some of whom he eventually, solicits to have his babies, according to people who have viewed the messages. Did see some wag on Blue Sky say he did want it to be the everything app. But yeah, that's his dating pickup app. Cryptocurrency influencer Tiffany Fong was covering disgraced crypto tycoon Sam Bankman-Fried's downfall when Musk started liking and replying to her posts. Musk's interactions ramped up as Fong posted more political content in support of Trump, by design, I'm sure. And Musk followed her last summer. That sort of attention from Musk on X, where he has 219 million followers, sent droves of followers to Fong, which was a financial boon. More engagement meant more earnings for her as part of that revenue sharing program for creators on X. During the height of her interactions with the billionaire owner, Fong earned $21,000 on the platform in a 2-week period in November, according to a screenshot she posted. That was about when Musk sent her a direct message asking if she was interested in having his child. According to people familiar with the matter, the two had never met in person. That is some sexy, sexy dating. Fong didn't move forward with Musk because she pictured having children in a more traditional nuclear family, but confided to a few friends about the approach, including St. Clair, whom she knew as another conservative social media figure, and how she worried that turning him down could, what, embarrass him, hurt him, disappoint him, put distance between them? No, could hurt her earnings. Once Musk learned that Fong disclosed the request to others, he chided her for not using discretion, according to the people, and unfollowed her. That contributed to a fall in her engagement, and her earnings declined. And what the real crime here was that you told others that you were declining the offer, and now he's not a super stud. Shut up, dumb girl! Yeah, well, I think that's the level we're working at here. St. Clair and Musk had in fact met earlier. In the spring of 2023, after Musk began interacting with the influencer's posts on X and followed her account. Soon after, they were exchanging direct messages before Musk invited her to visit the social media platform in San Francisco office, and the relationship turned romantic. I need romantic music for this. I don't have any, but this is Elon Musk and Ashley St. Clair, so here's the romantic music. Right, exactly. And, all right, well, what can I tell you? It's a bad idea. So the relationship turns romantic. It's not clear to me, though. So at the time that Fong talks to St. Clair, is St. Clair already in the program? And she's telling her about it because I know you're a social media influencer like me, and you're having 1 or 2 or 10 of his babies. So what's that all about? Or do they know each other as influencers? And Fong says, hey, guess what? Elon Musk wants me to have one of his babies, and I'm thinking about it, but probably I'm not going to do it. And then St. Clair says, oh, if you DM him, you can have a baby? I'm going to do that. I'm not sure. Musk invited St. Clair, who had been operations manager at a conservative media company that owns the Babylon Bee, piece of garbage, but whatever, onto his private plane for a trip to Rhode Island, where he was visiting one of his sons at college. I didn't realize that they were, any of the others were old enough, but okay. Just pointing out a private plane trip to an island. Of course, it is Rhode Island, but okay. Does it really count? I don't know. Anyway, it just reminds one of Epstein. The first time they had sex, and why are we hearing about this? Musk joked that they should pick a name for their future child. What a joke. That is so funny. But I guess for somebody who's like in it for the baby, and I mean, Ashley is in it for the baby too. I guess it's okay, maybe. I don't know. He frequently talked to her about having children. She said it was months later on a New Year's trip to St. Bart's, another island, that she told him that she was ovulating. Hey, baby, I'm ovulating. Okay. Couples do it, but, not like this. He asked her, what are we waiting for? And the two conceived their son on that trip. Romantic music, please. St. Clair said, all right, yeah. So once again, I don't know.
Wrong, sir. Wrong.
Yeah, it is wrong, and you really shouldn't do things this way. Being in his circle brought with it access to a constant stream of texts, particularly about his growing involvement in Trump's election. Before Musk publicly supported Trump, he texted her, I can't be president. Well, you can force it, but I can help Trump defeat Biden, and I will. In one text before Trump picked a running mate, viewed by the Journal, Musk asked St. Clair what she thought about Tulsi Gabbard as a vice presidential candidate. That would have been a disaster. Saying that in interviews, she says the right anti-establishment words. While Musk was in Pennsylvania canvassing for Trump before the election, Musk sent a series of texts about the urgency of winning the state to St. Clair, like she really cares. In all of history, there has never been a competitive army composed of women, not even once. I guess, probably. He wrote, men are made for war. Real men, anyway. Men who distribute sperm as party favors. He followed up with, I am in full war mode. Going to the front lines today. Must win, PA. Grr. Let's see. Are we up for any more of this? I don't know. It's just... I think we get the idea, and it would easily consume the rest of the show, and that wasn't the idea. But I recommend it to everyone. I'm going to keep it open. I'm going to read it off the air because I do want to see this thing all the way through. But I'm sure you want to hear some other news, maybe, might be wise. Again, I'm torn between falling back on other things that I meant to dig out, but I never did, I don't think, find the one article I was thinking of. I'm going to have to do some research to see if I can find it. I want to share some other stuff with you, like switching gears. We said yesterday, I guess we'll reach back to yesterday. We were talking about the notion of dismantling the Civil Rights Division at the DOJ, and we were reading the Bulwark article about that. Remember this? And I don't know. I found my own thoughts wandering to whether or not watching the whitewashing of January 6th and trying to reframe it as some sort of patriotic activity and the participants as heroes, not criminals, whether that had anything, whether that would give us any insight, or was that as crazy to us as it was to paleo-conservative segregationists to see the establishment of the Civil Rights Division at the DOJ? And I don't know. I'm not certain that that's an accurate historical parallel, but it was an interesting thought experiment anyway. But we were trying to tell people, like, basically what the Civil Rights Division is supposed to be about and what it's more likely to be about under Harmeet Dillon, Trump's appointee to, and now confirmed by the Senate, to run the Civil Rights Division. I think we left off right about that point, and we were pointing out even more pernicious than leading the administration's war on DEI using the Civil Rights Division would be policies, likely unofficial, of, for instance, looking the other way on police abuse, leading to federal tolerance of over-policing policies like stop and frisk and racially biased pretextual stops of drivers, not to mention another indefinite pause on federal pattern and practice investigations, looking into police departments suspected of widespread civil rights violations. But all of that just leading to more difficulties. I think we ended up with reading about Pam Bondi making Second Amendment issues a priority for Trump's second term and put the Los Angeles Police Department under investigation, but not for police abuse and racial profiling, but to investigate whether or not they were making it too difficult for people to get their concealed carry permits in Los Angeles County. Rather an amazing angle on which to launch an investigation from the Civil Rights Division. Anyway, I think at that point we left off, and let's pick up there. In 2021, California Attorney General Javier Becerra opened a civil rights investigation into the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. The LASD has faced numerous allegations of jail abuse, questionable uses of lethal force, and even multiple criminal gangs operating within the department. And remember, criminal gangs operating in the United States is something the Trump administration wants to treat with immediate exile to El Salvador. Why aren't they rounding up the criminal gangs working inside the LA Sheriff's Department? Well, because they're the right kind of gangs, I guess. A policy expressly prohibiting gang membership went into effect in 2024 following the state's investigations and an extensive civilian oversight report. In separate incidents in just the last few months, LASD deputies have pleaded guilty to violating the civil rights of a trans man during a traffic stop and have been found guilty of deprivation of rights under color of law, i.e. excessive force, for throwing a woman to the ground because she tried to record an arrest with her phone. Notably, Bondi's Justice Department removed the press release about the trans man case from its website, raising serious concerns about whether transgender Americans fall outside of this DOJ's understanding of universal civil rights protection from police violence. Announcing open season on policing would be bad enough in any administration, but it's particularly alarming given some of Trump's other actions, including, and here are some bullet-pointed entries in that list, terminating the career DOJ lawyers who prosecuted January 6th insurrectionists, firing the prosecutors who investigated Trump for crimes he almost certainly committed, firing 7 top FBI executives and implicitly threatening agents who investigated January 6th, firing other law enforcement leaders who refused to reorient their agencies to support mass deportations, dismissing criminal charges against New York Mayor Eric Adams in an apparent quid pro quo for municipal cooperation in immigration enforcement, firing the top military lawyers of the Army, Navy, and Air Force, revoking security clearances of private lawyers who have worked on cases against him or the administration, and intimidating other law firms to dissuade future actions, dismantling the Civil Rights Office at DHS, and repeatedly and vociferously advocating for law enforcement to use violence against protesters and immigrants. At the same time, Republican governors and other officials have already expressed their enthusiasm to help enforce immigration law despite having no obligation to do so, violating the principles of federalism and sometimes state laws. In fact, Republican legislators at the state level have been itching to use the state governments to enforce or over-enforce federal immigration policy for years. And as Jessica Pishko has documented, sheriffs around the country have pledged fealty to the president, even against state limits on their authority. More than most politicians, Trump's rhetoric and actions blur the lines between politics, law, and policy. He governs with the same bombast as a Fox News infotainment show, ignoring pesky problems such as facts, policy analysis, or legal authority. Trump may have best encapsulated the difference between his first and second terms when he said, "The second term, I think, is more powerful. When I say do it, they do it. There's no reason to suspect that Dylan and others," oh, I'm sorry, I'm out of his voice now. It's not a quote. "No reason to suspect that Dylan and others at DOJ won't take Trump's invitations to police violence and general impunity for perceived allies as official policy." It's not unrealistic to worry that Trump will attempt to use federal power directly against citizens. He's already floated the idea in White House phrasing of deporting American citizens to El Salvador. American history offers numerous chilling examples for him to emulate, including Japanese-American internment during World War II, which during Trump's first term, Chief Justice John Roberts lamely declared had been overruled by history. The Red Scare during the Cold War, Operation Wetback, and the myriad domestic operations against the civil rights movements by the FBI, to name just a few. Jim Crow segregation wasn't just about where to sit on the bus or which water fountain to drink from. It was a mix of state laws and social customs maintained by the public, like through the police, and private, like mob, violence. It was local tyranny. For generations after the federal governments effectively surrendered to the Southern Redeemer insurrection, it segregated federal buildings in southern states and maintained racially distinct military units. But much of the racial subjugation and oppression was tolerated by, not directed from, Washington. That is the big difference. Although it may seem counterintuitive, Trump's dismantling of the federal government is entirely consistent with the expansion of state oppression. And redirecting the Civil Rights Division's attention away from violent policing is a major enabler of that overreach. And that's an interesting point there, too, right? Most of the people who are on board with the destruction of the administrative state, like Steve Bannon and others, keep saying, well, federal tyranny can be defeated by destroying this administrative state. But as they point out, ironically, the destruction of the parts of the administrative state that they're taking apart first are enablers of tyranny, just localized tyranny instead. Except that Trump intends to make it federal policy too. Trump has influence even where he lacks formal power. He makes the identities of his enemies clear, even if his policies are not, and he wields violent mobs. While a return to a rigid hierarchical system like Jim Crow is unlikely, the petty tyranny of local law enforcement could, particularly in places with Republican-dominated state and local governments, reverse more than 6 decades of gradual progress under the civil rights regime. Just wanted to make it all the way to the end of that article so that we could get its point on record. Though there's a thing that I put aside from Chris Geidner at Law Dork, which might make a nice follow-up to that, though we only have a few minutes left. But hey, why, I don't think we have the time to start down a different train of thought. Instead, DOJ ends a key racial discrimination case, signaling an end to the Civil Rights Division as it existed. This is an interesting piece here. The Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department ended a lawsuit that it brought months earlier, and this is what putting someone like, a loyalist like Dillon in control will do. A great concrete example. They ended a lawsuit that it had brought months earlier under the old Biden regime, alleging a brazen pattern of racial discrimination against a black woman, an alarming development that suggests the end of the division as it previously existed. Less than 2 weeks into Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon's tenure at the head of DOJ's Civil Rights Division, the division submitted a notice on Tuesday that it is ending its lawsuit against the Mississippi State Senate over the legislature's alleged discrimination against a black lawyer who had worked in the Senate's Legislative Services Office. How do you like that? The lawsuit, filed in November of 2024, was brought by DOJ's Civil Rights Division to enforce Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The complaint alleged a damning years-long pattern of discrimination against Christy Metcalf, the first and only black attorney to work in the office in decades. Again, Mississippi's state Senate. As alleged in the complaint, the office consistently paid Metcalf $40,000 to $60,000 less than its lowest salaried white attorney, at times paying her less than half of what it paid any of her other white colleagues, even though she and the white attorneys were doing the same jobs with the same levels of responsibility. The complaint went on to detail the facts of Metcalf's time with the office, including the hire of a new attorney who had no legislative experience and the same number of years as legal experience as Metcalf, but was white. And you can imagine the circumstances under which That person was hired. Metcalf complained about the pay disparity at that time and had a request for pay equalization denied. Until her resignation, Metcalf continued to be paid about half of what her white LSO attorney counterparts were paid, the complaint concluded. Metcalf then filed a discrimination charge, or an allegation anyway, with the Civil Rights Division, and I guess, with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is where she filed. In May of 2019, so it goes back a ways. After investigating, finding reasonable cause to believe Metcalf had been discriminated against, and attempting to resolve the matter itself unsuccessfully, the EEOC referred the matter to DOJ, which sued in November of 2024. Okay, so important maybe to point out, she complained to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission in 2019 under the first Trump administration. They eventually referred it to DOJ. The Biden DOJ picked up the case and moved forward with it. Soon after Trump took office, the Mississippi State Senate had sought to put the proceedings on hold indefinitely based on the new administration. Oh, this one will be friendly to our racism. And a DOJ memo regarding a litigation freeze. DOJ responded in mid-February stating that it would agree to a 45-day stay, but also pushing back at the Mississippi State Senate's filing, noting the department, not the defendant, is the appropriate party to determine whether the department's internal processes warrant requesting a stay. After hearing, a 90-day stay of proceedings was ordered. On Tuesday, that 90-day stay was cut short with DOJ's dismissal notice, and the case was closed. The attorneys on the dismissal notice were Dylan, as well as Karen Woodard, Valerie Meyer as chief and deputy chief, respectively, and Louis Whitsett, senior trial attorney. So, how do you like that? Essentially, they now have the power to dismiss all of these lawsuits that made what sound like some very viable and very important claims about civil rights violations. They're going to use the Civil Rights Division to close all of that down.
From networksradio.com.
That is a change in focus, don't you think?
You have been listening to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
All right, our time has ended. In fact, it's long since it expired. Just time now to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Top of the list today, a paranoid Trump is conducting polygraph tests across all departments to find the dozens of leakers exposing his crimes. And guess what? They found two of them in Pete Hegseth's office just yesterday. Talk to you soon.